Imagine living in a time where taxes were so invasive that they reached into every corner of your life, and even beyond your death. That was the reality for millions of people in the Roman Empire. In a world where most people lived close to subsistence, taxes could mean the difference between survival and ruin. And what's even more shocking, it wasn't just the rich who felt the sting of Roman taxation, it was everyone. From the farmers who toiled the land to the tradesmen who sold their goods, no one was spared. But why was this brutal system in place, and how did the Romans justify it? Let's dive into the world of Roman taxes, where loyalty, wealth, and even your very existence were taxed. Setting the stage, the Roman Empire and taxes. The Roman Empire was vast, spanning Europe, Asia, and Africa. And with that vastness came the need to sustain and protect an empire that stretched over 5 million square kilometers. At first glance, the Roman system didn't seem all that different from what we might expect of an ancient civilization. Rome offered some basic benefits to its citizens, like subsidized grain, free baths, and legal protections. For most people in the empire, these were the only perks they could expect from their rulers. But don't be fooled. Beneath these apparent benefits was a complex and often exploitative taxation system that laid the financial burden on the people. While citizens in Rome were given relatively low taxes, this wasn't the case for the provinces. In fact, the further you were from Rome, the heavier the tax burden became. The key to understanding Roman taxation lies in the basic principle that taxes were not merely about funding the government, but about ensuring the empire's continued expansion, its military might, and its control over vast territories. Roman Republic taxation system. In the early years of Rome, the tax system resembled that of many Greek city-states, where citizens had very few financial obligations. For instance, in Sparta, citizens only had to supply food to the public mess halls, and even in Athens, many citizens were exempt from taxes. Only the wealthy elite were tasked with funding the city-state's military needs through special taxes and liturgies. However, Rome's system evolved quickly. In the Roman Republic, the government began levying a property tax on its citizens. This tax was aimed at funding military expenses, especially as Rome expanded its territories. To supplement this, Rome collected revenues from public land sales and rents, along with duties on goods, such as a 5% tax on freed slaves. But it wasn't just Rome that was taxed. As the Republic expanded, new provinces were annexed, and Roman citizens throughout Italy were exempted from many direct taxes. Instead, it was the provinces that shouldered the heaviest tax burdens. Taxes were typically paid in land and poll taxes, with the revenue collected by private contractors known as publicani. These contractors often exploited the local population, maximizing profits at the expense of provincial inhabitants. The imperial tax system under Augustus. As the Roman Republic evolved into the Roman Empire, Augustus took control of the taxation system. Augustus realized that in order to fund his military campaigns and maintain the stability of the empire, he needed to reform the tax system. One of his key changes was restricting the role of the publicani to customs duties and making local elites responsible for tax collection in the provinces. Augustus also introduced new taxes, including a 4% duty on slave sales and a 5% inheritance tax. To ensure the system ran smoothly, Augustus initiated recurring censuses in the provinces, which kept the tax rolls updated and allowed for more accurate taxation. Despite these reforms, Augustus did not impose uniform taxation across the empire. Instead, he allowed existing tax systems to remain in place when territories were annexed. This meant that taxes varied from province to province and even city to city. Some communities were granted exemptions or reduced tax rates in exchange for exceptional loyalty or services to Rome. Taxes could be paid in cash, goods, or both, depending on local customs and the needs of the state. For example, the people of Cyrene paid in silphium, a plant prized for its medicinal qualities, while the Frisians paid their taxes in ox hides. This system of payment, in kind, allowed the empire to adjust to local conditions. But it also created a patchwork of taxation systems that were difficult to regulate. Regional variations and the uniqueness of Roman Egypt. One of the most fascinating aspects of the Roman tax system was its regional variations. As the empire expanded, Each province continued to collect taxes according to its pre-existing systems, which meant that no two provinces were taxed the same way. Some provinces were granted special privileges, like reduced taxes, while others were not so lucky. Perhaps the most heavily taxed province in the Roman Empire was Egypt. Between the ages of 14 and 60, every male Egyptian was required to pay a poll tax, which was a fixed amount paid by each individual, regardless of income. The taxes in Egypt didn't stop there. Farmers were taxed on every crop they produced, and they also had to pay taxes on the animals they owned. Tradesmen paid taxes on the goods they sold, and there were additional taxes to maintain infrastructure like canals and levees, as well as to support temples and entertain Roman officials. But it didn't end with the provincial taxes. Even in Egypt, cities like Caranus levied their own local taxes. And when it came to trade, customs duties and tariffs played a significant role. For instance, goods imported from outside the empire could be taxed as much as 25%, a staggering figure compared to the 2 to 5% tariffs placed on goods exchanged between provinces. Diocletian's reforms, standardization, amid crisis. The Roman tax system would undergo a major transformation during the reign of Emperor Diocletian, following a financial crisis in the 3rd century. Diocletian realized that the empire's economic stability depended on a more standardized tax system, so he introduced sweeping reforms. Land and poll taxes were now assessed by standard units of area and population, making the tax system more predictable. Diocletian also revived the practice of censuses, ensuring that tax assessments were regularly updated. One of the most notable changes was the move to tax in kind, a method of taxation that mitigated the effects of inflation and ensured that the state could still collect its share in times of economic hardship. But while these reforms helped stabilize the empire's finances, they didn't resolve the underlying issue of corruption within the system. Tax collectors and financial officials continued to demand bribes, making it incredibly difficult for common citizens to pay their taxes without facing severe consequences. Roman tax rates and modern comparisons. How did Roman tax rates compare to modern systems? According to estimates, the Roman Empire's tax rate was around 5% of its GDP, which is relatively low compared to today's standards. In fact, modern states typically collect a much higher percentage of their GDP through taxes. Yet, even though the tax burden was relatively low by today's standards, the difficulty in paying taxes in ancient Rome was far more pronounced. For many Romans, especially the poor, paying taxes was a constant struggle. Most people were farmers, living at or near subsistence levels. In a good year, they might have a small surplus to cover taxes, but in bad years, due to droughts, floods, or crop failure, many would have nothing left over. And even in prosperous years, the regressive nature of the Roman tax system meant that the poor were hit the hardest. The divide between the rich and poor. The most insidious aspect of the Roman tax system was its regressive nature. While the taxes paid by the rich were modest in relation to their means, the poor were often crushed under the weight of taxation. The wealthy could afford to pay their taxes without much impact on their quality of life, but for the common people, taxes often meant going hungry, losing their homes, or even fleeing into the desert to escape tax collectors. The rich, on the other hand, found ways to use their wealth to build monumental public works that would leave a lasting legacy. They poured money into the construction of temples, theaters, and public buildings, leaving behind a physical testament to their wealth and the empire's prosperity. The lasting legacy of Roman taxation. Despite the corrupt and exploitative nature of Roman taxes, the legacy of the Roman Empire endures to this day. From the monumental structures of the Roman Empire, like the Colosseum and the Pantheon, to the administrative systems that served as the blueprint for later European states, the impact of Roman taxation is still felt. The taxes of the Roman Empire may have been harsh, but they also funded an empire that lasted for centuries. The wealthy elites of the empire left behind a physical and cultural legacy that still captivates us today. So, what do you think? Were the Romans justified in imposing such a burdensome tax system? Or did they take advantage of the hard-working common people to build their empire? Let me know in the comments below. And if you found this video fascinating, Don't forget to subscribe and hit the bell for more insights into history's most captivating stories. Thanks for watching.